Pastor Adam, and I'm one of the pastors here at Orange United Methodist Church.
And I'm Kori Robbins. I'm the associate here at Orange. And we are so excited today to welcome the Reverend Ashley Allen. She is an ordained elder in the Virginia Annual Conference and served many years at Forest United Methodist and now serves as the pastor at Oakton United Methodist Church. And she's going to be talking with us today about a ministry called Celebrate Recovery that she has had a lot of involvement with in helping to be the pastor of that community and to work with that ministry. So we are just thankful that she's here to talk with us and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, welcome, Ashley. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your ministry background.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you two, but also to be talking about this ministry that has just been so important for me, but just such a powerful learning opportunity on my journey. So I was licensed for ministry in 2013 after graduating from seminary, and was recently ordained. And over the years in between, I was serving at Flores in a number of capacities. And the most recent one was as the pastor of Celebrate Recovery. And that was half of my job. I was the online campus pastor for the second half. And so here I am now at Oakton United Methodist Church in Vienna. It's really Oakton, Virginia, but it's kind of neighboring Vienna, so one and the same, where I am getting to learn what it is in a whole different context to be a pastor, to be in ministry. So so that's a little bit about where I've come from and where I am now. But Celebrate Recovery, it's interesting. It's always been, and the whole concept of recovery has been just an important part of my story, of my journey, just kind of this thing that was intuitive to me even before I had any information about recovery ministry opportunities, to kind of back up this intuitive longing for recovery and transformation. So I'm excited to be talking about that today and some of the victory I've seen just in being a part of it in a new way.
Great. Well, we know that you are formerly the pastor of the Celebrate Recovery community at Flores. And can you just start off by telling, a lot of people probably are at this point now wondering, what in the world are they talking about? What is Celebrate Recovery? And if you could give us some background on what exactly it is, and then how you came to lead it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step program that comes out of Saddleback Church in California, Rick Warren's church, and is now global. It's international, but it also is a ministry from which a number of other recovery ministries have been born. So I've heard them called Freedom Ministries. I've heard them called Choose Life Ministries. There are all sorts of titles for that same concept. So a 12-step program that's Christ-centered. That's the big piece there. And not just 12 steps for what we typically think of 12 steps being for, substance abuse, things in that vein. It's hurts, habits, and hangups. So it's everything. It is, dealing with childhood trauma. It's dealing with divorce. It's dealing with emotional struggles like anger or depression. It's dealing with addiction, whether that be what we call our consumer addiction. So food, alcohol, drugs, or if it's dealing with challenges like codependency or addictions to, people, love, it just is a very broad spectrum, and it covers all of that. It provides a 12-step process for participants to go through that really is just living into what it means to be a Christian, to surrender to Christ and to let Christ do the redemptive and transformative work in our lives.
Yeah, one thing to let people know is a few years ago, while Ashley was still at Flores United Methodist Church, I actually attended a leadership training event for Celebrate Recovery, as the church I was serving was a part of that program and ministry. And that ministry really meant a lot to me, as you said that yourself, to be able to hear testimony and witness from other people, and whatever their struggle was, you could always find the commonality. You could find yourself in that story. And so I want to ask you, how has been working with and being in ministry with folks, and to use that CR language, Celebrate Recovery language, with their own hurts, habits, and hangups. How has that transformed you personally, and maybe even your ministry?
Yeah, so I mentioned that this concept of recovery ministry has always been intuitive to me long before I knew that there were ministries that that existed that did this work, that just was somehow ingrained in me. And that's because I come from a long line of family system filled with addiction and challenges as a result. And I just always, as a Christian, believed that there was hope for these people that I loved to find freedom from this thing that had a hold on them, and then to just experience new life in Christ as a result. And so as I got to know CR more, it changed me on a couple of levels. First, it changed my personal walk with Christ, because I was coming to remember the power of my own experience of surrender and transformation and redemption, because there was a season in my life where perhaps, I didn't struggle with addiction in the same way some family members did, but I certainly was choosing my own way. And on my faith journey, there came this point where I had this experience that we don't have nearly enough time to uncover, but this experience where I remembered, I got back to what it meant when I first became a follower of Christ. I remembered how powerful Christ is, and that I need not fall victim to my hurts, habits, and hangups, because those were already taken for me. And so being a part of Celebrate Recovery took me back to that experience I had. I remembered again that moment where I experienced the saving grace that God offers through Christ. And I got to experience that week after week after week, watching people come in, some of whom didn't know that there was anything to have hope in, or to hope for. And they were coming back. And they were coming back just because they were looking for something to grasp onto. And as a result, they were finding community, they were finding hope, they were finding healing. And so every time I got to bear witness to that, it was just further strengthening my faith and kind of taking me back to my own moment of transformation. And we've talked briefly before, and because you've seen it, and whether it's in the context of Celebrate Recovery or in the church itself, when you watch people come in at their lowest, when you watch them come in with no hope left, and then you watch them keep coming back and experience community and find relationship with Christ, and then as a result, you watch them break free. Like that is a game changer, and it's real, and it reminds you, whatever season you find yourself in, right? Because we have different seasons on our faith journey. It reminds you just of the power and amazingness is the best word I have, of Christ. So that was really, that's one way that I was changed. And then, I also then through that had new practices for my own journey, my relationships with the people in my life who struggle with addiction. I had new tools for the things that I struggle with, because the beauty of a program like Celebrate Recovery is hurts, habits, and hangups, right? So it's for humans. We've all got it. It just gave me new tools so that I could live a more rich and full life.
Yeah, I definitely believe from going through it myself as well, it spoke to me each week and helped me put into better practice all of the principles, all the steps, but then it also restored hope, because you would sometimes get a chance to see remarkable transformations. I remember one man coming one night for the meal that we would serve before the meeting, and when he walked in the door, you could tell that was as broken of a person as there could be. Mm-hmm. And over the weeks and months, you saw what became a physical transformation, as well as a spiritual rebirth, a spiritual transformation. And ultimately, he had to serve some time for some crimes that he had committed. But when he was preparing to leave, the church sent him off with a prayer blessing. And, it almost felt like we were sending a missionary.
Yeah. I was getting goosebumps as you were talking. It's really, it's stuff that you can't even imagine until you're face to face with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So such a beautiful way to get to see lives transformed.
Mm-hmm. And an abundance of examples, right? We could probably share stories all day about things that we witnessed, and then, to pull others in, we could just spend days and days talking about all of the victories and the transformed lives through this 12-step process that, again, is Christ-centered.
Well, and I remember one of the lives, just to share one more, was
do it all day.
Someone from the church that just wanted to come to volunteer. They wanted to help with the meal and to be a support. And after the first session, they're like, wait, I need this. Yes. And that was just a beautiful transformation that took place within her life. It was really neat to see.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Father Richard Rohr has a book, Breathing Underwater, about the 12 steps of spirituality. We are all addicted to something.
Yes.
And so I love that image. This is for me. Yeah, it's for all of us, for sure. Well, I know that it had such an impact on you as a pastor and as a person, but what impact, and maybe explain to us a little bit of the structure of having a CR community within another faith community. What is that structure, and how did having CR impact the life of the church?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So having it be a community within the community, we really worked to be intentional about making it a ministry of the community instead of two communities coexisting. And so we really tried to communicate and wherever we could, whatever place, website, worship, all that it was another worship service. It was another opportunity, a different style of worship to come and to continue to engage in faith and to worship and to hear a message. And so that drove a lot of what we did. And, there were opportunities around that, right? It took some time to create a culture where that was normative, where people knew that Celebrate Recovery was not a meeting that came and used our space, but instead it was a ministry of the church and a way for anybody in the congregation or outside, it was a great access point to engage in a relationship with faith. And out of that, so it took time, a little bit of an on-ramp there, and there's, probably still an abundance of opportunities to do that better. But out of that intentionality, I saw a shift in the culture of the church. So often people come into the church and there is this, or they're afraid to come into the church because there's this deep belief that they're not worth it. Well, I need to get my act together before I can come to church, right? Because I have to have it together for Jesus. And that comes from, all sorts of history and, perspectives that are thrust upon us. But this other worship experience helped break that barrier down. And instead it was, we're all sinners just trying to do our best. Let's come and just be together in this space. And over time it broke down that shame culture that can sometimes exist, not wanting to bear my soul's, forgetting that the church is a hospital for the sick, right? And so it started to eliminate some of that, and it, broke down stigma that, if you fit into this category, that there's something wrong with you, right? A phrase that has mixed reviews of Celebrate Recovery is, I'm one of those people, and those people is all of us, right? And it's instead of it being, oh, they're one of those people, right? We're all those people. And so over time, having this ministry so deeply connected to the life of the church, it just created different conversation and different culture. But a principle of the 12-step process is to give back, is to be in service. And so again, over time, once the ministry had been established and then had become a part of the fabric of the church, then you were seeing people from the ministry connect to the church. And so maybe they came in because of the 12-step program, but they didn't have a church home. Well, now they're connecting as a part of their process, their program, they're connecting to the life of the church, they're giving back. And then as a result, they're getting engaged in a church community. They're, starting to commit to worship in small groups, and it just continues deepening, their faith journey, but also their connection to others and their healing. So that was a big one. And then just opportunities for relationships to be built that really that changed lives mutually.
Yeah, I loved what you said about more than just it being a recovery program that takes place on your campus. It becomes a ministry of the church, and that requires intentional involvement and interaction. And, I think about, sometimes you'll hear about a church that doesn't have any children, so they want to open a daycare, thinking they'll add those families. Yeah. And many times what happens is they have a daycare and they still have no children.
Yeah.
That is the beautiful thing about when a church embraces a recovery program and is truly a part of it, seeking first the kingdom of God in the souls of the hurt, of those that have the hurts, habits, and hang-ups, which again is all of us. But when we seek first that, the fruit that comes from that, it's far surpasses what we could have imagined or thought.
Absolutely.
So now that you are in a different ministry setting, how has being a part of a recovery program like that, helping to lead that and facilitating that, how has that sort of shaped your ministry now and maybe even in the future? What can the church learn from those type of programs?
Yeah, so I in thinking about what the 12 steps offer in a Christ-centered context, I think the big takeaways, again, regardless of what it's called, are number one, the act of surrender, right? Choosing to turn toward Christ instead of away from Christ to our own will. And then I think amends is in there, being willing to make the amends, being willing to engage in that vulnerable conversation. And then another is the daily inventory. And that is sometimes one of the more foreign concepts, right? The idea of daily inventory, right? We'll just use the title because I think we all do it in a lot of different ways, right? We might end our day having a conversation with someone that, with a trusted confidant and exploring, well, this happened today and this is where I messed up and how would I handle this? And what could I, just processing what's gone on. Some of us journal, some of us meditate, some of us, go into a deep time of prayer. We all choose a different way of doing that work, but it's all daily inventory. And I think that's one of the great tools that recovery ministry, that Celebrate Recovery offers. So I think taking those into the life of the church, really encouraging new ways of exploring surrender, amends, and daily inventory for the purpose of continuing on a journey of holiness and healing. But I think additionally, being a part of that program, I think it's transformed the way that I preach and teach, and certainly has increased my heart for the least and the lost, really wanting the church to be a place where people don't feel like they have to have it all together to come in. They can just come in and find those same gifts that you do in a recovery context. They can find community, they can find support, they can find hope, they can find love, they can find a relationship with Christ. So just kind of letting, once that has become ingrained in you, letting that then inform all of the other work that you do. That's certainly an experience that I have now. And then in preaching as well, just kind of speaking to some of those principles and tools that have been so helpful to me. And the last thing I would add is just vulnerability. I think that my ministry has changed because I learned that vulnerability can be safe and it actually can benefit the kingdom if we're willing to just name our humanness and how, and that's what causes us so desperately to need Jesus. And if we can be vulnerable, if we, especially as leaders in the church, can be that example, then I think it leads others to feel safe to do the same.
Yeah, that vulnerability part is so rich there, because a lot of times people may put different leaders, pastors up on a pedestal and think, oh, they've got it all together. Well, when we allow them to pull back the veil a little
Yes.
bit,
Mm-hmm.
they can see that, kind of like the REM song said, everybody hurts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we all have that commonality. We know what it means to struggle. And so when people hear someone confess that need for God to carry them, to lead them, to guide them, it acknowledges that there is something bigger than us. So.
Yeah, some of our most powerful stories in the Gospels are those where, we just recently did a sermon on Zacchaeus, right? Where Zacchaeus was like ready. Zacchaeus was climbing a tree to see Jesus. Zacchaeus was like, forget who I was and the way that I lived. I'm just ready to be new. And if our vulnerability, if our being transparent about our journey can lead people to that same hunger to get to know Jesus, then that's a win. So.
Right.
Yeah.
My friend that I was referencing earlier that had to serve some time, I remember picking him up the day that he was released. And as we were in the car, I was taking him to the grocery store to restock his everything. And I just asked him, because we had communicated quite a bit over the months that he served. And I asked him, I said, if we read Romans 8:28,
yeah,
for the Lord works all things for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. I said, what is the good that God worked out of this?
Mm-hmm.
And he sat there in my car and he thought for a moment. And then he said, what came out of this is I know he is who he says he is. He is who he says he is. And he started giving witness to the way that God proved who he was during that time. And Holy Ghost bumps breaking out just thinking about it right now, that moment. But those are the kind of moments that it allows us as the church to be about that healing ministry that you referenced. So that's great stuff.
That's such a good question that you asked. And I think that's the lens, that if we could look at all of life through, right? That's what really leads us deeper, is how has God used this for good? And I think that you have just named the umbrella under which I got to experience the beauty of recovery ministry is that, somebody would come in really broken or wounded or lost. And then they would get to the point where they could look back through, because of the steps, because of the community, because of Jesus, they could look back and go, oh, well, this is the good that God worked out of, this horrible thing that I had to deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today for our time together. We're so grateful that you would give us this time to have a chance to check in and talk and to learn. Pastor Kori, do you have any final questions or thoughts?
No, I love that umbrella image of God doesn't cause our pain, but God redeems our pain. And if we allow God to transform that and redeem it, and the story that can be told, it's why we're here. It's why we do this work and why we're called to it. It's because we've experienced that grace. So thank you, Ashley. You're such a gift as a colleague, and I know that Oakton is just so blessed to have you in this season. So we're so happy to talk with you.
Thanks for letting me chat with you. This was real fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for everybody that has been watching and been a part of this today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.